Welcome to our first edition of Keeping It Real Estate. I'm your host, Shannon Ellison, and in this new video series, we're going to talk about trending real estate topics without the sugarcoating. Keeping it real. And I have with me Keith Walker and Sippy Jane with a combined 37 years of experience in real estate. So guys, how is buying a home today financially different?
Thanks, Shannon. Great question. In many cases, the values have really adjusted from 5 to 6 months ago. The prices are lower. And if you look at the payments, what they were 5 to 6 months ago with the interest rates at that time versus today, it's not much different actually. So I do encourage all buyers to really take a look at what their payments would be today and compare it to what they would have been 5 to 6 months ago, and they'll be surprised that things are not that much different actually.
So Keith, what's your take on that?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question, Shannon. There's some really interesting things right now in this market. And I think the two big factors that we have with the changes that are going on right now, first of all, is going to be home equity. This is a great time for people to get in and build that home equity up as opposed to where things were 5 to 6 months ago. You know, in the Bay Area, depending on where you live, prices have come down 17 to 20% since April and May. So now those people that bought then, they have to recapture their equity and then build up. People buying now have that built in already, so they're going to benefit from all this extra equity. That's number one. Number two, it's going to be property taxes. Property taxes are based on your purchase price. So the fact that prices are down 17 to 20%, your property taxes are down 17 to 20%, and that's almost a fixed rate. So when people come in and buy now, they get to keep that rate for the most part moving forward.
Excellent. And Sippy, this next question is for you specifically. If a home buyer was worried about their monthly payments, what would you suggest?
Thanks, Shannon. Really good question. Many banks, for example, I work for US Bank, we have interest-only options available. The way interest-only loan works is that your monthly payment is interest-only, which is quite low. In many cases, it's lower than rent. Mm-hmm. So using an interest-only loan is a great way to get into a home with lower payments. And you know what? The rates are higher at this point in time, and it's a temporary phenomena, right? Because the Fed is trying to do price stability, curb inflation, and things will return to normalcy. And once things return to normalcy, the buyers will be able to refinance and get into a normal conventional loan. So I encourage every buyer out there or anyone who's looking for a home, definitely talk to the lenders about interest-only loan options.
Here's a question on many people's minds. If you are a buyer today, is there any advantage to jumping into the market now?
Thanks, Shannon. Great question. And, I've thought about this question many times actually, and I'm so glad you asked this question. Definitely, anyone who's buying a home today versus 5 to 6 months ago has a much better opportunity to build equity in the real estate they're buying. And equity equates to real estate wealth. So this is a great time to build future wealth in real estate. And you know what? Once you have equity built into a property, you could use that equity and buy even more real estate, create more wealth for yourself. And that's how people have gotten rich in this country. So I think this is a great time to make some great investment decisions in real estate and build equity in your property.
Yeah, again, another great question, Shannon. Thank you so much. Sippy, I want to hit on the head what you talked about, Warren Buffett, right? He always makes that comment that when people are in fear, that's the time to act, right? And this really is that time. And this is why people are building up that are coming in now. So, then I'll say the two things that came out of there, Shannon, I think are negotiations and discovery. Usually in our market here in Silicon Valley, it's a seller's market 70% of the time, which means that go back to April and May. People were bidding on a house. There were 5, 10, 20, 40 offers on a house. People had to make rush decisions. They had to make compromises on the house they wanted. They didn't have time for their own discovery. They didn't have time to see how the appraisal was going to turn out, if it would appraise for the price that they offered. So there were so many risks that came in at that time. Now we can go in and potentially negotiate offer price, depending on where the property is priced. We can have contingencies in place. So we can do our own inspections. We can check things out. We can have an appraisal done and see if it appraises for the sales price. If it doesn't, we can renegotiate. So there's so many benefits that come out of there, and this really helps the family now to take their time, to to make sure they're buying the right property, make sure they're making the investment for the future. It's a win-win right now.
So Keith, does this remind you of any past markets?
Shannon, that's a great question. I'm getting asked that all the time. And if you're watching the media right now, what are you hearing? 2008. It's 2008 all over again. I worked in 2008. I worked in this market in 2008, and all the fiasco that was, this is nothing like 2008. What this really reminds me of is 2018, 2019. Really, if you look at all the numbers, there's a lot of similarities. I know every market is going to have its differences here and there, but back then we had the fear of a recession and a looming recession. We had fear of unemployment. We had the stock market doing all kinds of things. A lot of similarities to what we're seeing right now. Now, what I can tell you about the buyers and clients that I worked with in 2018, 2019, every one of them is ecstatic that they bought a house back then, because what their value is now based on what they got then and being able to negotiate and being able to find the right home for their family, right? Right now, we've seen that change, and this market, I think, is going to be the same thing. People 3 to 4 years from now are going to be so happy they bought right now. This is such a great opportunity for people.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Keith. And I completely echo everything that you're saying. And lastly, this question is for you, Sippy. Mm-hmm. We get asked this question a lot. Do you need 20% down to buy a house in the Silicon Valley?
And the answer is no. In many cases, you can buy a home with 10% down or 15% down in the Bay Area. For example, at US Bank, we can do loans up to $1.5 million with less than 20% down. So I always ask buyers that you should look at options with less than 20% down as well, because this could be a great time to save your money, right, where dollar's appreciating, and maybe potentially use it for future investments in the future, So definitely you can buy a home with less than 20% down.
Thank you both so much for all of your insight today. We hope that you found some value here, and if you have any topics or specific questions you'd like to discuss with each of us, reach out. Our contact information is below. We'll see you in our next video in the series.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.